Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. I'm thrilled to be joined today by writer-director Tom Edmunds and actress Freya Mavor to talk to me about the brilliant original British comedy movie Dead Within a Week or Your Money Back, which had its world premiere this weekend at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and the film has struck a chord with not just me, which had its world premiere this week at the Edinburgh International Film Festival, and the film has struck a chord with not just me, but the audiences, and has earned a well-earned spot on the best of the fest. After 27-year-old William fails at his 9th attempt at suicide, he decides to take up genial 65-year-old hitman Leslie on his offer to help out. Leslie has quotas to meet to keep his membership in an Assassin's Guild, but when William meets the woman of his dreams, things get more complicated for both men. This is a fantastic black comedy, and I'm thrilled to have been joined by the writer and director of this movie. He is such an enthusiastic guy, and I too share his enthusiasm for this movie. It's such an original and fun British movie, and I hope you'll check it out when it comes out in future. Thanks for listening. Bye. Yeah, thank you for joining me. It was just off to say there, I went into the film not knowing what to expect. I'd seen Tom Wilkinson was in it. Yeah. Dead Within a Week or Your Money Back. It's like, you know, when you see lots of films at the festival, you're looking for just something that'll stand out, a name, and it's like, I'm sold on that. I'll go into that.
Great.
And I was watching that thinking, this is such a great movie. It must be an adaptation of some sort of original source, a comic book, and the fact that it's an original piece of, you know, British cinema that's action and adventure, fun, and something quite unique makes it kind of stand out for me. So I'm really excited to see that it's got to the best of the fest.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so many great movies are in there.
Yeah.
And you belong in there as well.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? We're so thrilled with this Best of the Fest thing. I mean, we found out about it about this time yesterday, and it makes such a big difference to us.
Yeah.
The festival for us, this is our UK premiere, and you know, the Edinburgh Film Festival provides you with such an amazing platform to, you know, put your film in front of audiences. It's a bizarre thing for a director, especially a writer-director, because, you know, you have this great intense period where you're making the film, and we shot for 26 days, and it's super stressful, super long hours, super hard work, but that's what you've been aiming at the whole time, and it's so enjoyable. It's like this big adrenaline rush, but it's a month, right? It's just hardly anything, and actually so much of the rest of the time, like, the film's been on a journey for, I think that I had the original idea 5.5 years ago now, so so much of that time was me sitting on my own at home with my computer, typing some words on a page. That's such a lonely existence. To go then through and now have it at a festival in front of an audience and sharing it with that audience is just a magical thing.
Because obviously it's a UK premiere, and, you know, it's like some of these people seeing it just now are some of the first people to see it.
Absolutely.
So that gives out that validation of,
absolutely
brilliant. It's not just like a test screener audience. It's like an actual paying audience.
Paying audience, and you know, we sold out our screenings, which I think is why we're in the Best of the Fest, and that's been brilliant to see that actually, you know, just on things like the title, the cast, the pitch, I guess, that there is an audience for this film.
You can picture it almost being like, I can almost picture an audience of going, this will be their sort of favourite movie of the year, the most enjoyable one. That sort of one where they go in and go, oh, that was brilliant, it had this, that's funny, it's enjoyable. But just the fact that it's original, it's something new, and it's better than half the stuff that we've got in, you know, the summer movies. So that's so exciting as well.
Thank you. I you know what, it's such a weird thing. I said to so many people when I was, like, you know, getting the crew together and interviewing HODs and this sort of stuff, you know, you want to really impress people with the integrity of the project and all this kind of thing. And I said to them, well, you know, I'd rather we had one person that loved the film and 9 people that hated it than if 10 people were just like, whatever. And now, of course, I'm on the other side of that, and I'd rather it were 9 people loved it and 1 person hated it.
The press and industry screening was obviously a bit earlier than the general one.
Yeah.
And you know what these screens are like? They're 9 in the morning, people are either hungover, tired, they've seen so many... But all the scenes just seem to hit. And see if Christopher Eccleston was on screen, you're getting roars of laughter, and some of the dark comedy was just hitting the spots, and you're like, if it's translating well with this, I wonder what it would have been like if I was in a general public one, you know, people have paid for it. And I know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just so nice to hear. You know, I'm not going to tell you that I'm a great, art, that I'm doing this for the art, or, I mean, I love film and I am a cineast, but I'm not, I am not someone that's going to claim that Ingmar Bergman is my favourite filmmaker. I'm a real, I was brought up on a diet of, Spielberg and Zemeckis and this sort of thing. So, I'm making films for an audience, and the fact that, you can be in a screening and it can be 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and yet the film is still connecting with you and you're laughing and engaged in it, that's just terrific for me.
I was wondering when I was watching it, and I was thinking that it's such a risky movie in a way.
Yeah.
I can imagine, handing around that script and people looking at it going, are we trivialising suicide here? Is this disrespectful?
Yeah.
And even though when you watch the movie, it's clearly none of those things, but what was it like kind of with that process, and what kind of feedback were you getting as you were going through it all?
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, the film industry, I think, is incredibly risk averse, which I think is why there's so little original content. Or original content that there is, exciting original content, has to be so low budget, because people just are unwilling to take a risk. So when you present them with a comedy where, the initial pitch of it, I guess, the initial scenes and stuff are, the main character is this guy who has failed to kill himself 7 times. That's a tricky one for people. And then you say, I'm going to make a comedy out of this, and they're going, oh God, no, I don't think we're going to get into trouble. But I was sure that there was a way by which I could present that story in a way that was optimistic and life affirming and funny and engaging and ultimately responsible. And then actually during the writing process, as the writing process got I guess more towards the end, we then gave it. We spoke to a few charities, and we spoke to the Samaritans particularly, were helpful in that, and ultimately what you realise is that as much as this is a sensitive subject, and you have to be responsible and you have to be respectful, actually the main thing is about destigmatizing it, and and making sure that people feel able to talk about it. And I think that actually comedy is really helpful in that. And like I say, I am an optimistic person, and I'm trying to make a film that an audience is going to really love, and is going to, they're going to come out hopefully on and up. So whilst William, the main character, starts in a dark place, he's discovering reasons to live. And that's so I think ultimately it ends up being life.
That's a pretty universal thing as well. So many movies are about what are finding those moments to live, and it's just that in this person doesn't have that will to live.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so one of the big kind of things for me thematically with the film was that you've got this main character, this young character William, who has not found any purpose in his life, and he's really struggling with that. He says this thing, do you ever wonder what's the point? Just what's the point of me? What am I doing? What am I contributing? I think it's an anxiety that a lot of people have. And then I counterbalance that with the Tom Wilkinson character, Leslie, who's this assassin who is on the brink of retirement. He's had this very, very clear purpose all the way through his life, and he's really been defined by his job. I mean, I think one of the sort of great ills of the modern world is that when we meet somebody, we say, one of the first questions we ask people is, what do you do? You can be so defined by your job. And I think that for so many people, that's not the biggest part of their life. It's more like I sort of rather ask people, what do you like? What do you love? What's your passion? What's the thing that you're really into? Because I think you're going to have more interesting conversations. But that's not the world we live in. People ask, what do you do? And so without Leslie's on the brink of retirement, and without the prospects of having no job, he's really thinking, well, who am I? Yeah. Without my job, who am I? What do I do? What's my purpose? So we sort of put these two characters who are really struggling to with those questions together, and which leads to a thing which I don't beat people over the head with the philosophy or whatever. This is just it's a fun movie. Yeah. But I hope that what people might take away from the film is that if the film is saying anything, making any statements about that, about what the purpose in our lives are, what brings meaning to our lives, it's as simple as it's the connections that you make with people. William makes this connection with the young female lead, Ellie. Leslie has this great connection, this great relationship with his wife of 36 years. When they have this very tender, really lovely relationship, which I think is the thing I'm proudest of in the film. But then also, in a way, the weird friendship that develops between Leslie and William. That's nice. They make a connection, and so it's all of those things that really save the characters.
And finally, what was it like bringing all this cast together? Because Tom Wilkinson and Christopher Eccleston are revelations of that comedy roles and stuff. And just Wilkinson is just so good in it. And what was it like getting these people together, especially it's your first feature, to get these powerhouses in?
Oh, it was just a thrill. I think that there are so many levels on which that's thrilling. I mean, listen, Tom's hilarious because he makes it quite clear that he doesn't really want to be there, or that not that he doesn't want to be there. Like it's more that he almost. I realise it's a bit of a kind of a shtick that he's got, where he almost like pretends that he hates you. Because you've sent him something that he couldn't say no to. Yeah. He's desperate to not work. He'd much rather not work. And he just says to me, I'm so lazy. I just don't want to. But actually, and then he says, but I got the script and I just couldn't say no. But he's almost using that as a stick to beat you with. It's hilarious. But he's just wonderful. And so wonderful to work with as an actor. Just a guy that is rigorous. He beat me up every day. Every day he'd say, "Why are you doing this? Why is the camera there? You're not going to need that." But it was brilliant as a first film.
Yeah, absolutely
Brilliant, because you're being questioned and you're having to justify it. Yeah. Tom, the camera's here because I'm going to do this. I'm going to cover the scene in this, and this way, and I need this, and this from you. And he'd just go, okay, and then get on with it. Absolutely fantastic. And then to realise that suddenly your film is now on a list which includes films like Batman Begins and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Michael Clayton and The Full Monty, and you go, well, that's a massive thrill. Yeah. I mean, that's just a huge thrill. And Chris Eccleston was just brilliant with. He was just so up for it. We had him only for a couple of days. Had sort of designed those scenes and those parts to be able to be shot pretty quickly and efficiently. But he came in with such an energy, and was just utterly charming and wonderful to work with. And I remember we did the sort of towards the end of the film. There's a scene which is between sort of a face-off moment between Tom and Chris, and then it gets interrupted by Marion Bailey that's playing Tom's wife Penny, and I remember rehearsing that scene, and I was almost in tears, just because like I say, you've sat down, you've had an idea and you've sat down and written a script, and now you've got these three terrific actors saying the words that you wrote. It's quite a thrill.
Yeah, well, good luck, and I think the thrills will keep on coming. The best of the fest is going to be the start of it all, I think. So I wish you all the best, and thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. What a fun chat. Thank you.
But thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, and congratulations on getting into the best of the fest as well.
Yeah, it's exciting.
What's been the reaction to kind of the movie so far from people?
It's been really positive. I think people have really responded to the film, and kind of I think it's lovely when you get a film that people have really enjoyed and they've laughed and they've come out feeling kind of invigorated by it. So it's really positive.
We were chatting about it. I saw it in the press and industry screen, and it's usually 9 a.m. People are either hungover, relying on coffee, and just like every comedy bit just played well with that kind of crowd. You thought, I wonder what it'd be like to see it with like a general audience. And I was so surprised as well that it is an original film. You watch something like that, you think, oh, that's so good. It must have been based on a book, but the fact that it's something new and unique must be appealing for you as actors to get involved in.
Definitely. I think it's interesting at the moment how, even like fashion, everything's being recycled, and so all the people are revisiting stories or doing remakes of old films, or even doing biopics or historical events. So it's such a joy when you get an original idea and you get like a kind of sort of unique story that's come from someone's imagination. It's such a joy.
One of the things we were discussing was like people's reactions as they read the scripts. That when I was watching, I was thinking originally, I was like, oh, that's risky. I can imagine, especially in cinema, it's so risk averse. There's people worry about these things. What was your reaction when you read that script for the first time, and obviously talking about suicide and death? What did you think about it?
I did. I just found I found the writing so appealing. I found the jokes funny. I think, if you're reading something about something serious and you can sense it's a comedy, but you're not laughing at the jokes, that's when kind of red flags and alarm bells are going off. But, I think a lot of filmmakers and a lot of writers deal with very serious subject matter, and when they can deal with it in a light way, but still, still in a tasteful way, it can become so strong because it raises an issue whilst still finding a way to laugh and finding a way to be light. So you get, amazing, like one of my favourite, I guess, writers for films is Charlie Kaufman, who deals a lot with, neurotic characters or depression or mental illness or things like that, but in an incredibly smart and funny way.
Because it's such a universal film in a way, because it is about finding that reason to live. That's something we see in so many other movies, but it just takes that unique way to do it.
Definitely.
What was it like working with people like Tom Wilkinson? Like the scenes between you guys is just fantastic, and William as well. What was it like, the whole process like working with such legends?
It was great. I adore Tom Wilkinson and his work, and have been a big fan of his for a long time. So it was great to be able to work with someone you admire. I'd worked with Aniran before, actually, on a BBC drama called The White Queen, where we actually played lovers, which is very funny, and it's such a different, it's sort of, he's playing Richard III, and I was playing like his niece, who he ends up having a thing with. So it was very funny to find each other on a different project that is so different, but still playing kind of a love interest. So that was really, it was very kind of amusing when you, in work, you kind of come across actors you worked with before. That's a real joy.
With this film as well, obviously we kind of touched on it, it's such an original concept as well, and I think with you look at your career and it's always original movies and stuff like that. What is it you always look out for when you're looking for a script? So when something like this comes on your doorstep, you think, this is the one for me, and is that something that you always actively look for when you're kind of picking projects? Yeah,
I think when you read something, or when you learn about a director, or you go into a project, or you're enticed by a project, it's what you're, it sounds very sort of wishy-washy, but it's your gut feeling. It's what your sort of gut says when you read it, and what your sort of immediate reaction is. So I would say, when you read a good project, it's a good project. And when you read about a character, I think the kind of thing that's immediately appealing is whether or not there's a real challenge, whether or not there's something that you're really going to have to work on and change yourself for, or really sort of alter your whole being for. So that's what appeals.
I was just talking with Tom, the writer director, and such a passionate advocate of this movie, and his love for what he's created and working with everyone is just so obvious. And like you listen to him, it's such experience coming off of him. What's it like working with him as a first-time director, and that energy on set? That I can imagine it being quite exciting.
It is, yeah, because I do, you're kind of, you're on a journey with someone who's creating who's been given the opportunity to create their first their first feature that he's not only directing but he's written, so he's very involved in that story. And just because of Tom and the way that he's got this amazing energy and he's got this amazing positivity, and the fact that he could get people like Tom Wilkinson on board because they loved the script. I think that sort of speaks volumes for the quality of the project. So it was great fun.
With the audience for this, that I can almost picture perfect. Like, see this when I think it's October it comes out. Like, that's going to be so many people, and I can imagine like sort of 20-year-olds just thinking like this is their best film of the year. And I think it's going to create a lot of debate and discussions when it comes out of it about kind of suicide, assisted suicide, things like that. What kind of discussions from, obviously it's just in its early doors of the world now seeing it, but what kind of discussions have you had with the movie as you spoke through it, and what are you kind of hearing from people that are now finally being lucky enough to see this movie? Yeah,
it's funny because it does. I have a few friends who saw it when we kind of did a cast and crew screening in London, and it's really interesting to see how much people laugh and enjoy it and come out having really loved the film, but also that it does. It's funny, but it also brings up a lot of existential questions of what gives someone's life purpose. Why does someone feel they have or their life has value? And it's interesting sort of it brings that conversation, I suppose, about, which is something that people don't speak about enough, about, about mental health or feelings of loneliness or sort of searching for identity. I think we're in a society that's very, and the young generations a lot of the time feel sort of lost and displaced, and so it's good to have as well a story that deals with that in a comical way, but that's still bringing up an issue that people can.
So you think of Scotland in particular, it's got such a high suicide rate, especially for young men, and you always hear the usual, we need to talk about it and open up and things like that, where sometimes it's, you think of all the movies, and a lot of movies that have been about British men feeling suicidal, it's always aimed at sort of the older generation, where something like this it's a movie that younger people can see, will want to see, and will create that kind of conversations and stuff, and it'll be interesting to see where it kind of goes with creating that kind of discussions, and whether they could show it in schools or things like that. Maybe that's something for another department, but I think it would
that
be
would be great.
I think it could be interesting to see where that kind of conversation goes, especially here in Scotland.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's really encouraging to hear, and if it has that reaction, then that would be ideal, I think, for everyone. You
obviously you split a lot of your time between sort of America, UK, and France with creating movies. What do you kind of feel like is the state within kind of the UK at the moment? Because we're not seeing many sort of movies aimed at younger people here in the country. It's mostly maybe sort of bigger movies are being kind of filling up the multiplexes. With this movie, what do you think is going to make it so special that it's brought you here, to take part in the film? It's the best of the fest. It's in something like that. Audiences are clearly connecting with it quite early doors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the UK. It's there's a huge kind of gap between, I suppose, like the really independent films that have sort of struggled for funding and have managed to sort of get a debut and get that support, and then the films that are I guess bigger, kind of bringing in commercial like the commercial appeal because of established directors or because of well-known actors. But there's that huge gap in between, which is where the support should be for young filmmakers, new artists, new writers, new directors, and new stories and unique stories, original stories. And I think it's such a shame, that isn't sort of fed more, because those are the people who are the next generation of I guess great artists, and that's I think there's a real need to sort of encourage and embrace that and sort of support that.
It almost seems to go from something like a Paddington to then it goes to sort of Edgar Wright movies. It's like, well, where's the movies for that are aimed at younger people, to have them having conversations about their lives and see their struggles and woes reflected on the screen? And I think the fact that it's only early doors is reflecting that this movie will create that conversation and give people that things to talk about.
Yeah, I'd hope so. I really would.
And kind of finally, where's next for the movie as it kind of begins its journey out into the world beyond festivals and into the audience?
I mean, I'm as you know, as the performer, I'm kind of not as savvy as the producers, directors, distributors might be about its future. But I hope all I can kind of know is the reactions we've got so far, and the sort of, I guess, the desire that it has, that it gets the future that it deserves. So I would hope to see it sort of coming out in cinemas in the UK. And in Europe and where else sort of later on this year.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and good luck with the movie. It truly is a worthy crowd pleaser, and good luck with everything.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.